I think there's a lot of things happening within content marketing right now where you can't really say this works and this doesn't. It's so individual based on the target group. It can be one target group, you say, okay, it's medical convention delegates. But within that, there is like 1,000 different objectives, which I personally myself try and navigate, but I also find it really hard.
Welcome to the Convene podcast. My name is Magdalina Atanassova, Convene's digital media editor and your host today. I'm happy to welcome you to another episode from our series where we bring together the perspectives of different generations on hot industry topics. In this episode, we delved into the world of content marketing with Signe Schønemann, brand manager, marketing and communication at Bella Group, and Silvano Schaer, chief commercial officer at Convex Switzerland. We explored a multitude of topics from understanding audiences and nurturing partnerships to leveraging essential tools. But one thing stood out. At the heart of every marketer's mission are the people. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the Convene podcast. It's a pleasure having you both, and I'm just going to directly jump into introductions. And if you can briefly introduce yourselves and your background and how many years you have in the industry. And Signe, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm Signe. I work here at the Bella Center in the central marketing department in the mother group called Bella Group, which both operates a Bella Center, but also 3 internationally franchised hotels here in Copenhagen. I've been working with content marketing for about 3 years, but overall working with marketing on and off for a couple of more years than that. But yeah, very actively with marketing for the past 3 years.
Silvano?
My name is Silvano Schaer. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Convex Switzerland. Convex Switzerland is a PCO, so we organize medical conferences mostly. It's do also association management. I'm in marketing and sales now, since 20 years about. A long time in the hotel business also, and now since 13 years with Convex.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Let's just start with some definitions, to put it this way. So how each of you defines content creation? Silvano, let's start with you.
Well, content creation is like the magic that you use to create something that speaks to the people, that speaks to the heart of the people.
It was a bit more hard for me because I think, like you kind of touched upon, it's a little bit intangible, like what content marketing is exactly. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's something that goes on Instagram or it's something that goes in LinkedIn, like it's something very visible. But for me, it goes back to like the actual, like what kind of activations. My main work is brand activations. So when we go into fairs or we do commercial partnerships where we do pop-ups and things like that, what is like the content of that? But then also what is the storyline that we're building around that goes in then obviously to social media or press afterwards.
You made a very good combination with...
Is this growing into a very strong partnership already?
What's the approach that you take for the events? Or I know you have a bit different perspectives, but what's the approach that you take or some of your favorite channels that you use?
What we do is mostly medical scientific conferences. So why do participants go to a conference? Physicians go to learn the newest treatments, and it's very content-driven why they are there. It's mostly because of content and because of the networking. And to create this content, you really have to know what drives the market at the moment and what is important to them. And to find that out also, I mean, you have to really know your audience.
I think that was one of my main touch points as well, that what we mainly concern ourselves with when we do content marketing is also we want to build a relationship with the audience, and we can only do that if we try to dig into their brains and try to understand their purpose of really being there. And then, of course, there is a set of KPIs that we set around that. So right now, we're just really trying to increase awareness around our brands. So views is a very organic part of that, the KPI set, when we set our drivers for the content marketing.
And you have very different audiences in both of your cases. So how do you understand, especially with medical doctors? You're not a medical professional yourself,
no.
or your team. So how do you really reach that audience or understand how to speak to that audience?
Well, I think, in content marketing, and especially if you talk about newsletter, emailings and everything, often what I experience, it's just deadline driven. And so register now, otherwise it will cost more from the next day on. And that doesn't really trigger something in the feelings of the people. It is just, okay, I will maybe lose a bit of money. But to trigger the emotions of the people, it is important to know that content. But how can we know that content? What is important? So, we publish a lot of newsletters, blogs. We can look at websites, and we see pretty clearly what interests the people. We see the click rates, the conversions that it gives. We have all this data just lying around. It's all about data analysis, and when you do that right, you really can understand your audience pretty good, and also what kind of audiences you have.
And there's a lot of surprises with that, don't you think? I think there's a lot of things happening within content marketing right now where you can't really say this works and this doesn't. It's so individual based on the target groups, and even just on, it can be one target group, you say, okay, it's medical convention delegates. But within that, there is like 1,000 different objectives, which I personally myself try and navigate, but I also find it really hard.
Yeah, it is. In addition, with medical conference, we have the scientific committees, and there we have physicians inside who know their field very, very well.
You don't want to compete with that.
No, it's important to talk to the experts, to talk to them, but also to talk with the different persons of this target group. Without talking to them, you can't reach them. You will never know what really touches them, what interests them.
And I think with that comes into my favorite topic is like partnerships. So you really have to engage in those partnerships and create those relationships with the people you want to create content for, because you and me as event professionals, we won't talk about the new stuff within medical science. We're not really cut for that. But if we create the right partnership, we can engage the conversation. I think that's much more interesting, how we can shape a format then so it suits into our channels, but with the scope of leading the conversation with the audience.
I like how you're both staying in the realm of people. Would that exclude the latest buzzword AI of the conversation? Do you engage with such tools and technologies to help you understand the audience better and craft better messages?
Personally, for me, I don't engage a lot with AI at the moment. It's a field I find a little bit scary, to be honest. I think it is like that for a lot of people. We don't have anything set up for that. I don't know about you guys, if that's something you proactively...
Yeah, well, I think we had quite a steep learning curve during the pandemic. True. Also, with digital events, it's much easier. Just you can track everything. You can track behaviors, you know which sessions are visited. Yeah, really, what content do they like? Which exhibitors do they visit and everything? When it's physical conferences, it's much more difficult. We can't track everybody. It will be a bit scary also. Technology would be here, but AI helps in digital meetings.
True, I agree with that.
And how about storytelling? How do you both incorporate storytelling? Because again, we're speaking about either very professional fields or medical. Is there a story there that you can actually bring to your audiences?
With medical, it's a bit difficult. Yeah, I mean, directly to the content, no. In my experience, there are not a lot of stories. It's very much facts-driven, But there are other topics to create stories around. For example, if a conference does something for sustainability or so, there is again a story to use and tell, and but it's not directly in the main content of the event.
I will also say, I love working with conventions, but it's also the business area of the many ones that I work with that is the most difficult. So when we work with the hotels and we are working on a new positioning strategy for Crown Plaza, which is just around the corner. But they're located to the biggest concert venue in Copenhagen. So it's a very organic storytelling of saying, okay, this is your preferred concert hotel because it's just 100 meters away from this concert venue. And we actually created a commercial partnership with a festival here in Denmark where we did a pop-up hotel. So it was quite easy to sort of say, okay, well, you guys are from out of Copenhagen, but we're sure you go to Copenhagen for concerts. Why don't you stay at the preferred concert hotel in Copenhagen? So that's kind of like, it's a more soft topic. It leans more into people's feelings and preferences on a personal level. So that was one of the easier storytellings. But we've learned that creating storytelling around testimonials. So we do a lot of interviewing with the organizers and the participants when they're here, creating short videos that really helps in selling the venue, of course, afterwards. But also just, creating more people feeling-based content and storytelling in the post-communication of events.
Stories are something of the most powerful what exists at the end in communications. And I'm also involved in the Geneva International Association Forum, and there it's more about business event platform. And in such platforms, or like a PCMA here, we can really implement stories much, much better to make the messages also purpose-driven at the end.
I agree with that. Totally agree with that.
And moving a bit to marketing channels, what works best for your audiences, or maybe add also the personal layer, what are your favorite channels to use personally as event professionals?
It's not really a difficult question, but there's a lot of things happening in the channel marketing field. Personally, I really enjoy LinkedIn for the more corporate communication. We've found that I'm not really doing a corporate messaging on like Instagram or Facebook. It doesn't really come across, versus we can really see that professionals are really engaging in LinkedIn, especially when we do more purpose-driven, people-based communications. Versus if we really want to increase our viewing rates, content with like influencers on Instagram, just still rocks the boat. We've been trying to incorporate a bit more TikTok, but it's a difficult media. And for now, with the target groups that we have, especially at the hotels, it's more engaged with the sort of 30-plus segment. Favorites from my side is LinkedIn and Instagram, for sure.
I think it very much depends on the conference and where your audience is there. It can be different, but for business, LinkedIn is also my favorite that I use most. But Twitter is also, or X, we call it now.
Got to stay on the beat.
I think it's also a very good tool to get into conversations with the audience, to get them engaged. Especially during an event. That you have a physical conversation and the digital conversation going on. So there you can create quite an impact.
I just want to put in that regards that I'm using the PCMA app. You probably are as well. And I was quite amazed by probably a lot of integrations and AI used there. But for example, after all the sessions, you get a thumbs up or a thumbs down to provide feedback. I haven't done it myself yet, but I could imagine just being busy with other things, but I could imagine that delegates would actually use that because it's easier than here we use a lot of like QR code scanning and did you like your meeting or did you like your coffee? And people don't really do that, but if it comes through a well-working app, that would be complete preference of communication channel for sure. And it works really well with the PCMA Plus app for sure.
To add with the different channels, it's just important that you don't send the same content on all channels. It needs to be customized. You can't put on Facebook or Instagram the same as you put on LinkedIn. It doesn't work.
Doesn't resonate.
We loved doing that some 5 years ago, right? Like that. Not anymore.
No, but that's really true. And we are also really trying to work a lot more with influencer marketing, which is really interesting to see how you work with that like 5 years ago and your perception of that to where it's come now. It's both in terms of cost and effect, which is really interesting. And risk, by all means.
Speaking of all these channels, especially like now X, former Twitter, and you mentioned TikTok, they are seeming to be falling into this category of, having political trouble, being banned in certain places. And then you mentioned the app, which is very concrete to the event. So do you think in the future content would move away from such third-party channels and would be more integrated into something owned by the event brand?
I personally believe not, just because the audiences are so huge. And if you create an own channel, you're talking to the same people. But what you actually want is also to get other people interested who maybe don't have a connection yet to this event. Yeah. And for that, you need the hugest possible reach.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's also, again, understanding your customer, talking a little bit about the customer journey. I would never have expect from my customers that in their initial awareness phase that they would come into just being completely exclusive on the Ella Center app, for an example. We don't have an app, but imagine we did in 5 years. I don't think that they would come in there immediately. I think that would be much more in a loyalty phase when they've actually started to commit themselves to our venue. So I totally agree. That's, in terms of the span of audience, then I would also stick to the more commercial channels.
And what about metrics? You already mentioned KPIs. So what kind of metrics are valuable right now for you?
For us, it's a lot about awareness. That's the overall bar for everything that we do, is how far can we actually go, and of course with the least budget as possible. So there's something about views and there's something about budget, but also everything we do right now is about filling occupancy and increasing revenue. Q1, I guess it's the same for you guys, is extremely difficult in the hotel and events business, especially living in Copenhagen, who has a bit of a reputation for being cold and rainy and freezing in Q1. It's not really the biggest driver to lead people here for large events. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on right now. So it's creating awareness about the opportunities that are then within very cold, freezing Copenhagen in Q1. Yeah. One small example.
Yeah, well, I think, related to measurement, you should measure everything you can.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
I was trying to scope it down a little bit.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's one of the big elephants in the room we have at the moment, where we all get data. Yeah. But what do we do with that? We have to take the time to go deeper into this data, to analyze it properly, and to learn from it how to improve the marketing. Yeah,
I agree. And also because a lot can happen in, you were talking about communities during COVID, and we still see the community movement escalating in Copenhagen. It's a very big thing, especially within sports. You see all these running and swimming and cycling clubs that are just popping up everywhere. And we've talked a lot about joining those movements, but it's tricky because everybody is doing it. So it's also, again, measuring that kind of data as well. If we did it, sure, we have great location for going running and stuff, but what would be the actual KPIs of partnerships like that? Could we increase revenue from it and benefit from it? But I think at the end of the day, it's, what is the actual KPI of doing things like that? Because it's easy to go into a movement, but what do you want to gain from it?
I think that's a great message, because I feel a lot of marketing people, not only in events, in general, just run after the latest trends head on. I believe we saw that also now with Threads, that when Instagram launched it seemed that overnight everybody transferred and had a thread and had also a strategy on how you can already benefit from Threads, which was funny, but also ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't mention but we should have mentioned?
There's been a bazillion of things.
Well, just what comes to my mind is in content marketing, when you put out messages on the social media channel, it's very important that you keep track of these conversations also, and that you own the content that you put out. If you just shoot messages out and conversations start and you're not engaged, they kind of go into directions that you sometimes don't want. It can go into a shitstorm or whatever. So
this is actually one of the reasons that we're not on X, because it requires so much maintenance, and we don't have the resources in our organization for that right now. We'd love to be more engaged in political content, but we don't have the resources to manage it. So in terms of risk, that's not a platform that we're going to use at the moment. It's in the future strategy, but right now
No, but that's
we couldn't manage it.
The most important. You have to know what not to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, limit yourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also something we saw in the past. Everybody tried to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And now we see a bit more focus towards targeting, really understanding that audience, like you said at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think for me, one of the things that I work very meticulously with is combining sales and marketing. Obviously, again, focusing on increasing revenue. It's like not really going in because, like you said, the sense of urgency, book here, do it now, special early bird discount. It doesn't appeal to people anymore. We also just see like newsletter signups. It's becoming very not modern anymore. People are not going for it anymore. So it's also finding the ways around, of course, getting people in and getting them to stay there. And I think that's the beauty of like branding, that you can actually build these relationships with your audience and still increase sales. But it's definitely working with that in a more strategic and organic way, trying to not be a pushy sales platform.
I agree, yeah. What I see especially in, sometimes in the industry, people are just doing marketing with not target-driven. They don't know what at the end they want to reach or what is the overall goal of this. And if you just push stuff out and you don't know what you want to reach, how will you know if you're successful or not? Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And it's about sticking to the plan. Sometimes also. You get so many good ideas and so many good inputs, and that's the beauty of the internet as well, right? That you constantly just boomed with inputs and great ideas, but it's sometimes also sticking to the initial plan and not getting overwhelmed with tons of opportunities. And I think that's, especially as a marketeer, that's sometimes the struggle, like, oh, here's a great idea for a new campaign, or here's a surgeon need, or like urgent need, or how do we actually stay focused on the actual target?
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So to just summarize what you said, at least my takeaway is to be a good marketer in events, just be more human.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that 25 minutes in one sentence?
Well, I can do that.
Yeah. No, but I totally agree.
It's all about people at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you would like additional perspectives on the industry, check out pcma.org/convene. Until next time.